I think there's nothing more challenging than this, except perhaps an Indian girl getting married and going and living in her mother-in-law's place. To be honest, I don't think governments should support entrepreneurship. That goes against the concept of free economy. A big question which I sit with startups and discuss when to go for outside funding. Next 6 months' expenses should be in your bank account in a current account. That will give you the peace of mind and the ability to react to situations. So cash flow management is so important. I would put it at the top of the list in the type of issues that an entrepreneur faces. Try to excel for the sake of excellence. Be positive, Be positive.
Welcome to the Collative Podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, the highs and lows, the expectations and challenges. Today, we have the good fortune of being joined by Mr. PN Vijay. He has an experience of more than 50 years into the investment banking and public relations. He started off his career with State Bank of India, followed by ANZ Grindlay, and then Citibank, where he was the country head for the merchant banking division. In 1990, about 34 years back, he started his own investment banking and wealth management company. So without any further delay, let's welcome Mr. PN Vijay, sir. Hi Vijay, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So let me start by saying that it's an absolute honor to have you on the show. Thank you very much for taking out time and coming to us.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir. So I'll start by asking you to speak a little bit about your transition into entrepreneurship and a little context of that time.
Well, I was from a service family, to use the cliche. My father was in government service and most of my uncles are in government or private sector. And when I started my education, the whole idea was that we get into a good job. 2 of my brothers went into the IAS and a couple of others went into good private sector. And I also did the same. I joined State Bank of India, which is a very leading financial services organization, and did quite well. And from there, I moved to ANZ Grindlay's, which is now Standard Chartered. At that time, it was the biggest foreign bank in India. I headed the merchant banking division, which was basically capital fundraising and mergers, acquisitions, that sort of thing. And then I sort of moved over to Citibank, where I was the All India head of investment banking. So this stretch was between 1972 and 1990, about 18 years in corporate life. Learned a lot and unlearned a lot. Then a time came around 1990 when that urge to do something on my own came. It's almost like an itch in the middle of the back. It refuses to go away. In my case, I was what you could call a very successful person. In my early 30s, I'd become a vice president, a senior vice president, which was pretty unusual even in those times. But then I decided that I'd like to do something on my own. 2 reasons, I think, if one wants to really crystallize it. The first was that India was changing. You would have read that India was a very socialist economy during the 50s and 60s, and we had severe import controls and licensing restrictions, and foreign investments were highly restricted. We were a very closed economy. But then from 1985, when Rajiv Gandhi took over, one got the sense that India was keen to open up. We liberalized, we invited, for example, the automobile sector, we invited the Toyotas of the world and did many other things. We were no longer the country which was throwing Coca-Cola out and IBM out. So I felt maybe India, this is a good place to be in for my talents, and when all this opening up happens, obviously the financial sector will also open up, and so there will be great opportunities, and especially foreign companies would like a person who has worked in overseas areas, locations, and who's familiar with the way foreign companies operate. there'll be for some use for me. And on a personal level, my family, we've always loved India. We go abroad very often, but it was reaching a stage in Citibank where I had to go abroad and work because India was a small operation for them. And the prospect of, leaving this country of ours in spite of all its garbage and its traffic jams which people write about, there's something about India which one loved. So it's a mix of both a well thought out decision and also an emotional decision not to leave this country. So I took the plunge.
What are the challenges did you face from a well-established professional job and to coming into the entrepreneurship?
I think there's nothing more challenging than this, except perhaps an Indian girl getting married and going and living in her mother-in-law's place. Everything is so challenging. I tell you, we can have a whole podcast on just that. But those are times, when you are in an organization, you take it for granted that so many things are there. A HR department is there to hire people. A dispatch department is there to send out courier services. Your accounts department is there to pay salaries. Your tax consultants are there to look after your income tax notices. Boom! Suddenly all that disappears. There you are, Mr. Robin Hood, standing in your Sherwood forest all by yourself with your bow and arrow. So that feeling of being pretty naked. It hits you, and it really hit me hard. There was a time when I would go on Excel, prepare this thing. I'll take a printout. I'll rush to the post office and send it. There was no internet in all those days, so you would remember. So the very fact that you don't have any support systems was a very big challenge. And the second was, you didn't know where the next rupee was coming from. Suddenly, if you're on a job, you assume that at the end of the month, there'll be a credit into your account. No, it's not there. On the other hand, there are debits into your account, which are sure, which is your staff. You have to pay for salaries, you have to maintain them. There's a certain, what we call fixed costs of a business. So you have to keep making money. So that starts worrying you. Oh, this mahine mein kya hoga? It's coming to be 24th, 25th, So these two were very big challenges. And the absence of an organization and the fact that you have to have enough cash flows, manage your cash flows, at least in the beginning of your... And there are many other challenges, but I'm just telling you two major ones.
Okay, so from 1990s to till today, India has changed. What do you see the major changes in the landscape in terms of business, in terms of people trying to enter into entrepreneurship? What are the major changes you see?
I think, as you said, there are many changes. The major ones, in my view, one is globalization. Your enemy is not sitting next door, but somewhere in Reykjavik in Iceland. That's the big thing. The whole world has become one market. So globalization has brought in so much of uncertainty, has brought in so much of all opportunities. Not only is your competitor, but your client could also be in Uganda. So globalization, and many companies don't come to terms with globalization, and they fail. The second is information. There is so much information available on the net, and that too with ChatGPT and things like that. In this information age, it can make life a lot easier. For example, in the financial sector, it took us so much time to get access to a balance sheet if you're looking at investing into a company, to get access to the annual reports. Today, anywhere, you go into the MCA site, pay $100, and you have the last 5 years balance sheets and everything. And you go into some other site, you get research reports about those companies. So I think globalization and information have totally changed the way business is done in India today.
Okay. So you just mentioned the financial challenge of anyone starting up. What you see today, any entrepreneur or any aspiring entrepreneur who wants to start his own business, what are your suggestions for that person in terms of keeping the finances intact? Because even today, what we hear is that out of 100 startups which are being started, very less are being successful. A lot of people fail for different reasons. But specific to the finance, keeping the finances intact, what are your suggestions for that?
Cash flow is king, we say. Without cash, there's no business. So businessmen should realize that. The young geek who comes out of 5 years in IIT with the greatest ideas in sliced bread should understand that he needs to feed people. I mean, not only himself, but his staff who depend on him. So cash flow management is so important. I would put it at the top of the list in the type of issues that an entrepreneur faces. Every company faces it. Reliance faces it. Reliance has a huge treasury, but what it deals with is on a gargantuan scale. $5 billion, $4 billion. For this guy, it's on a much smaller scale, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, small amounts. So, but cash flow management, you have to be proactive about it. And I would suggest to entrepreneurs, you fund yourself at least for the next 6 months. Next 6 months expenses should be in your bank account, in a current account. That will give you the peace of mind and the ability to react to situations. So cash flow management is a key concomitant to successful entrepreneurship.
So more than just an idea, the finances are very important for a person to start a business.
Yes.
Okay. So you have been into the finance industry for the longest period I know. What difference do you think is from 1990s or from that time today into the financial services startups? You started your business at that time, somebody wants to start today, or the company is already doing business. What difference do you see over there?
Well, the way of doing business has changed in almost every sector. Some in more than others. And I would hazard a guess that the financial sector has seen the greatest amount of change. Every part of financial sector. The word financial sector is a very catch-all type of thing. It includes one gamut. It includes insurance, banking, asset management, stockbroking. It goes on. Retail lending, equity research. I mean, the whole gamut of it. Mm-hmm. But one can surely say that all of them have changed substantially due to the changes in the last 20, 30 years. I'll give you an example. If you take lending has become so automated. Today you have software. What are these fintech companies? They're all basically technology-driven finance companies. They have software, they have programs. They just feed in some data about a borrower and it gives you a complete analysis. On a scoring sheet, it tells you a 9 on 10, 7 on 10. It's become so digitalized. So lending, stock markets, where a lot of people take up jobs, so many startups are there. Can you imagine the day when I started working in the stock market, in the 70s, there was only physical trading. To buy a share, you had to go into the Bombay Stock Exchange. There'll be people shouting, and if you see those old movies, and you'll see, everything was so, and the volume of trading was in thousands or so. Today, we put through something more than 1 billion transactions in a day, more than 1 billion, highest in the world. The number of transactions in the Indian bourses is the highest in the world. So huge amount of technology, computers, and online trading. You can sit in your bathroom, in your bathtub, and lose money in the stock market. So digitalization and automation and processes, everything has changed. I would say one could run a finance company if one needed 100 people 30 years back. One could do the same with 5 people. Or with the same 100 people, you could do 20 times more volume, more bottom line today. So financial sector is so exciting and it's still changing. Fintech is the new game on the block. So tomorrow we don't know what it is. Tomorrow, with AI coming in,
Yes.
it might be something else. So financial sector being so related to, it's a non-asset sector. Sectors which are asset driven, like a cement plant, cannot change very much. The only thing change that has happened in the cement industry in the last 50 years is from wet process to dry process. Otherwise, the same things happen in the cement industry. So certain things by nature cannot change very fast. But the financial sector, yes, it's been in the center of change.
So, how do you think the Indian government, the government is very much pro for new companies to start up and startup India and all that. How do you think the Indian government supports entrepreneurship in today's time? And what do you think? What are your suggestions or recommendations on that?
To be honest, I don't think governments should support entrepreneurship. That goes against the concept of free economy. What is entrepreneurship? You enter the marketplace and win in the marketplace. What's the government doing there? We are all believers in, I at least am a believer in the temple of free market enterprise. Government should be a facilitator. I think the only role of government for startups should be facilitation. What do we mean by facilitator? They should build the roads, but they should not put roadblocks on who can go, who cannot go. So if you had to give government a role, I would say, please remove all obstacles for free flow of investments. Okay, when foreign investment wants to come into India to fund a startup, don't put any bottlenecks. Make tax laws transparent. Make tax laws transparent. I'm not saying give tax advantages. I'm not a believer in an industry prospering through tax advantages. Then that industry is not viable per se. Pay the taxes which every other corporation pays, but tell me what I should pay. If I'm invested, if I'm an investor from Silicon Valley and I've invested in a startup in Bangalore, I should know what's the tax, what's the capital gain tax, what's the withholding tax, etc. I think that there needs a lot of clarity on that. But one good thing Indian government is doing, and I think very appreciative of it, is corporate governance. You see, you're seeing the latest, what's happening in Byju's. Byju's was the star of 2-3 IPLs. We could not open the TV in the night without seeing Mr. Shah Rukh Khan talking very highly of some Byju product or other to some young girls. So that what happened to that Byju? It's a case of corporate governance or misgovernance. So many of them. So what's important is corporate governance. It's ethics. You must do business in a proper way. You must look after your staff in a proper way. That's good old-fashioned, good governance. That government is doing a lot. I should say the level of transparency, the level of accountability that we are seeing is about the best in the world. Foreign friends of mine come and they're amazed at the level of disclosures, the level of transparency, etc. Some people complain, oh, this government is asking us too many questions. But you remember, in a startup, if 100 rupees is going to the startup, probably 2 rupees is coming from the promoter. Well, 98 rupees is coming from outsiders. So he's accountable to those 98 rupees. And these 98 rupee walas have willingly trusted the whole show to him, who has just got 2 rupees and probably has taken it out through salaries and whatever in the first 2 years. So I would say he has to live with the governance. He has to live with the accountability. And I think I'm very happy that our government, there are a lot of things government can do. I mentioned the taxation. There are some others. But on the whole, I think the Indian government has been pretty proactive in handling corporate governance and startups. One other thing, and I'm here talking about B2B companies. You cannot create too many assets in startups. For example, I've advised some semiconductor companies, okay, people who want to enter the semiconductor field, which is very fantastic, in Bangalore. Now, these are B2B businesses. Your eventual client is an Intel or somebody like that, or NVIDIA or somebody like that. Now, you need testing. You need equipment. These cost a lot of money. If we want to encourage startups in the hardware, in these types of businesses, government should invest in technology parks, in very sophisticated technology parks. Taiwan has done that, where an entrepreneur can rent out, so get tests done. So these are on the infrastructure side. They don't require big roads. But they do require testing support. They need high-speed internet. They need low-cost internet and things like that. But on the whole, on a scale of 10, I would say Indian government is 8 on 10 when it comes to supporting startups.
So, as there are a lot of people who, and this show is basically designed for people who want to do startup or who are aspiring to do. What are the 3 topmost things a person who wants to do a startup should keep in mind? These are something he will not overlook at any cost.
Apart from praying and praying and telling his family, I may not see you for too much time in the day for the next 3 years. In the point of view of business, I'm happy you asked this question. I would say, having worked at so many startups, involved with Paytm as a director in its initial years, with India Mart as a director in its initial years, these are very big names. And with many others as an advisor, many other very successful startups. The first is know your market. Where startups find it difficult, they have a great idea, but there's a lot of difference between an idea and commercializing and getting good dollars out of that idea. And the biggest problem is to analyze your market. And I said earlier in this program, the market is just not the Indian market. The market is there. It's a global market, both in terms of opportunities and in terms of threats. Your competitor may be there. Your client may also be there. So you need to spend time. And I'm from an IIT. And so many of my IIT friends, I talk at alumni associations and so on. I find that quite often they haven't done their homework well. They think they've done their homework, but they're so lost in their product itself that then they burn their fingers. So, take at least 3 months. Engage a marketing consultant or somebody and tell them, boss, abhi batao, am I doing the right thing? Especially if you are in a B2C startup. B2B, it's a bit easier. You may have 1 or 2 clients who might have committed to you. You give me this, I'm giving you. I've seen that. Those are some of the most successful ones. They need to be very high-tech, but there the problems are more of quality control, etc., technology. But in B2C, your Swiggies of the world, your Zomatos of the world, etc., the distribution, the selling costs, you have to get into the detail. So in one word, I'll say marketing is a very big thing that startups should look at. The second they should look at is governance. It is very fashionable for a startup, say to them, have a drink or something. I don't know. I leave everything to my chartered accountant. Boy, oh boy, if there's a problem, your chartered accountant is not going to jail. You're going to jail. He's going to send you flowers. So you have to understand that in India, there are so many rules. Company law, balance sheets, GST. You're going to get hit with all of them. And you cannot be a rookie in that. You have to take the trouble. In fact, if somebody asked me, I'd love to take classes for these geeks from IITs and IIMs on these things. How to read a balance sheet, seriously, how to file an income tax return. It's very important because I tell you, the minute you get a notice from the income tax department, 50% of your mind will be on that. You will lose that peace of mind to concentrate on your job. So the second I'll tell is understanding the fiscal and statutory environment in which you work. Because there's an aspect of business. Business is everything, no? The third is what we talked about earlier, cash flow. Cash flow management. It could work both ways. You may have too much cash. I've known startups, suddenly somebody likes the idea, first round of funding, he's got $1 billion. He doesn't know what to do with it. He blows it. As I say, ek makan kharid liya, 2 BMW kharid liya. That type of thing. I'm not saying startups are doing it. Frankly, I think these stories are very exaggerated. But you have to manage cash. Every business has to manage cash. More startups, because it's a cash burn business. In fact, when I look at for actual investing, for my own investing, or when I work with some family offices which want to invest, we talk about cash burn. How long is your cash burn? 2 years. Okay. What is the cash burn the others had? What is the nature of the cash burn? Okay. This is very important. The one more is HR, your people. You see, it's very easy. You started this startup because you felt very excited about it. Like me, you got bored with working in a structured environment. Something made you start. You're the owner. You're the Malik. You will get the glory and you will get everything. What about that guy, your CTO or CIO or your CFO, who has to leave that cushy job, his wife and 2 kids and his mortgages, and join you? Is he going to leave a Hindustan liver and join you? Then your story had better be very good. So your people, there are 2 problems in HR in startups. First is they find it very difficult to get people. Very difficult. Because in all honesty, a person who's in his early 40s, mid 40s, for him to move from a very structured, stable, safe environment to work for somebody else. So your scales, my suggestion to startups is make them entrepreneurs with you. You straight away, your top 5 people whom you feel you require, make them your team members. Give them ESOPs, give them equity, or give them a loan to buy equity. Do something, but let them feel committed to this business. Okay. And second is, for some time, be prepared with not so good people. That's what I did. When I was in city, I used to go to IIM Ahmedabad or went to some of the better business schools in the US, Wharton or HBS, to hire our people. Because Citi was a good brand name, and working in the investment bank, everybody wanted to work in the investment bank. But when I started my company, I had to settle for something less. I had to go to a good local college or a good local MBA and work with take kids who were prepared for a lower salary. So you have to come to terms with the fact that HR is going to be a challenge. For the top people, motivate them through stock options, etc. Make them owners of the business, and be prepared for some time to accept lower quality employees.
What are the specific industries or sectors the startups today are targeting, or what do you recommend are the upcoming sectors in the country?
If you look at it factually, the startups in India have mostly been in e-commerce. I'd say 90% of Indian startups have been in e-commerce. That is, delivering electronically products and services into the real world. That's how whether it's Make My Trip, buying your air tickets, Zomato, or Swiggy giving you food, or it's Big Basket giving you, or Book My Show, booking your movie show. They're all B2C businesses. The other, so obviously, it's a truism to say that e-commerce is where the big opportunities are. And second is technology-driven, high-tech companies. These are B2B businesses. See a lot of them in Bangalore, actually, where I live, where high-tech companies which are filling a void dealing with, and SaaS, software as a service. These are some of the areas. So I would say that if you want to be a startup, one of the things, 2 things I would say are sine qua non. One is scalability. Because the investors who invest into startups, in turn have investors who are looking at something like 5x over 5 years. Okay, return. If you don't get a 5x over 5 years, you feel that's not met your expectation. So which business will give you 5x over 5 years? A steel plant is not going to give you 5x over 5 years, because scalability of a steel plant is so difficult. A hotel industry, running a hotel is not going to, a hospital is not going to give you 5x, because you can't increase the capital assets of a hotel or a hospital 5 times. So Whereas Swiggy can give you 5x, Zepto can give you 5x. So you have to be in businesses which are scalable. You have to be in businesses which are technology driven. You have to be in businesses which are asset light. I would say these are the three criteria you should use. And technology means such a big word. Now you have to use Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, etc. And if you go one level deeper and say, okay, using technology for what? Some of the things like warehousing, for example, using technology for warehousing, using technology for logistics. These are great areas still. Indian economy is growing so much. These are areas where there are huge technological upgradation is required. So I would say a lot of opportunities, but probably you'll find very few startups in hospitals or later you might get mature investors. Let's say Apollo Hospital wants to increase its number of beds. You will find mature investors like KKR as somebody coming in, but that's at much later. But we are talking here about startup by entrepreneurs. First business they are starting. And these are the areas where they should concentrate.
We just talked about that cash flow being the most important thing in the business. So what do you think the entrepreneurs who are trying to raise money or to gather funds, what are your suggestions for them? What should they choose between a loan or equity finances? What are the options available for them?
Well, most of the startup funding in India has happened through equity for obvious reasons, because the loan market in India is predominantly an asset market, asset-driven market. I go to a bank and ask for a loan. The guy asks, what security can you give? Do you have a property, or do you have an LIC policy or something like that? Startups obviously don't have that. So loans as funding for startups is very, very little in India. As startups grow, after the first round of funding, there's a growing venture debt market. Okay, there are people who are prepared to give you unsecured debt. Okay, you become revenue positive. Sorry if I'm getting a bit technical with all this jargon that startups use. You become revenue positive. At that stage, you're not prepared for a second round of funding because you're hoping the valuations will improve as your top line goes up. Then you go and take up a venture debt. That is, there are companies which will give you debt, but venture debt is expensive. If you can get bank debt at 10%, venture debt will be 17, 18%. So that's an option. The big question which I sit with startups and discuss when to go for outside funding. I'll pose the problem to you in a particular way. The way valuations of startups work, and valuation itself is by itself another podcast, valuation works, is as the business grows, the valuation becomes more. Because valuations are based on what you call top-line multipliers, on EBITDA multipliers, and so on. So, but at stage one, when it's just a concept getting implemented, if you get basement funding, that funding will come in at very low valuation, obviously, because the risk involved for a venture capitalist to come in at that level is very high, isn't it? So for that risk, he doesn't want to pay any premium. So my advice is, till you get a top line going, try to fund it by yourself. That means you get the biggest bang for the buck. If you're able to sell a share only at par, at the basement, once you become revenue positive, you'll be able to get at least 50 rupees a share. If you become EBITDA positive, you may get it for 150 rupees a share. So if you can do the tough job and try to fund yourself up to a certain point, that means you've de-risked your business a lot more. And let me tell you, venture capitalists and PEs also like it. They like to receive proposals which are in a slightly developed stage, not at what we call a concept stage. a stage where the commercialization appears to be happening. So, coming to your point about funding, the funding is essentially equity, and some amount of founder himself bringing his own funding, his family, his relatives, his friends, etc. And that still remains a very small portion of funding of startups.
Do you think as of now, is there currently, if there is there a slowdown in funding in terms of what we used to hear before?
Yeah, that's happening. It's a winter. Obviously, the numbers show it's a winter, and on the ground also we are showing. See, this is again, to my mind, a capitalist phenomenon. The capitalism works that way, in cycles. Okay, there was a boom. There was a boom in funding. Money was chasing startups. What happened was the valuations went through the roof. Companies were getting even 8 or 10 times the sales multipliers, which even a Hindustan Lever doesn't get from the stock market. If you look at the market cap of Hindustan Lever, it's not that much. But startups were getting that type of thing. So some amount of disappointment had to happen. Disappointment. People came in at a particular level based on a particular business model, which was a bit too optimistic. Then when the second round of funding came, the funding they got was less. So if you're coming at $1 billion valuation, next round comes in at $700 million valuation, then you've lost 30%. And your board tells you, my friend, mark down your valuation. That hits the employees, their bonuses, the company, its profits, etc. So this is what's happened. That it was too much of a boom. If you ask me personally, the valuations had gone out of whack, and some amount of correction has happened. But I don't think it's matter for worry. This type of thing happens in the secondary stock market also. But sure, today valuations are much more reasonable. Funds are available, but investors have become a lot more cautious, a lot more cynical. They have burned their fingers. So that's how it is.
So as you said, it works in cycles. So you expect the funding winter to get over anytime soon?
Absolutely. As the economy grows, there would be need for startups. And India is a great place for startups. I'd say the United States, Great Britain, Israel, India. These are the knowledge. India has something very good going for it. It has a powerhouse of knowledge. Young people who are smart and who are very well educated and aspiring. And India itself is a large domestic market. It can service a very large domestic market. So I don't see any major shakeout in the startup industry. But what I do feel is it might change direction, which is also quite natural. Economies change direction as India goes from primary producer of primary goods and services into a more sophisticated economy, and the areas where startups will venture into may become more sophisticated. All that will happen. And agri-tech, I think that's a big game that's going to happen. Using technology in agriculture. So far as I've said, much of the startups have been in fintech and in B2C companies. I think the next boom, I feel, could be in agri-tech, using technology for improving agriculture and making good money out of that. So that's my prognosis.
Once there's a startup, when they start their journey, they get to a particular valuation. How do you think they should they should look for partners, merger and acquisitions to elaborate, possibly technology partners or partners in some other field? How do you think they should look for the right partners?
Inorganic growth, as we call it, is fundamental to business, and more so in the startups. Because startups, what happens is, initially you may get some very good funding. And your business may not have the capacity to absorb that funding. But there are opportunities in the market, and there is pressure on you to grow. The VCs may be telling you in the boardroom, why don't you increase the pace of growth? So inorganic comes in very well, mergers, acquisitions. A lot of that is happening. Acquisition of Akash by these people. Byju's, the typical example of a large acquisition. And many other acquisitions are taking place, consolidations are taking place. Some startups may like to sell out in cash and take a holiday. So all that's happening, and all that is very good. The entrepreneurs are the best judge of what to buy. But one can see a direction where we are going, and we analysts and we so-called experts in investment banking, we like to predict this might be the next target. And so it's happening. And to answer your question, I think growth is very, very essential for startups because your investors are expecting the growth. And one of the best ways of growing is through inorganic. Inorganic growth always brings in so many challenges, integration, culture, etc. But that's a new thing. That's a new ballgame. But all that is happening. I think that will accelerate consolidations, M&A among startups, fintech especially. Fintech, a lot of that has started. One fish swallowing another fish in the pond. All good, all good, all good.
I saw certain lectures on Bhagavad Gita on YouTube, on your YouTube channel. So how do you think the teachings of Bhagavad Gita can help the startups, the entrepreneurs who are so into so much pressure, or a normal person going to office, to maintain their work-life balance, to maintain their composure, be calm? And do you think the teachings of Bhagavad Gita can help us in that?
Indeed, I'm happy you asked that question. I think the teachings of Bhagavad Gita can help everybody. A householder, a homemaker, everybody. But more so for, I think, entrepreneurs, startups. Because one thing I find about them is that they're very, very anxious. I can find literally the pressure around them to perform and, meet targets. I think the Bhagavad Gita is a document which tells you, try to excel for the sake of excellence. Try to do your duty, try to do your job, and you will find that you will excel. Yoga karma sukhaushalam. Yoga is nothing but excellence in work. Some of these ideas, which of course I keep talking about when I talk to people, are very useful. Because I have felt it. As a person who has used the product, I can tell you, the expectation levels get so high. The pressure to perform is so high. You sometimes feel it, and sometimes you wish there was somebody to hold my hand and help you. And at that times, I think the Bhagavad Gita, with all that its knowledge, gives you solace, gives you peace of mind, and gives you effective strategies to convert everything into a win-win situation, to get you a sense of balance. And most importantly, also talk about family balance. I found so many entrepreneurs. I think why entrepreneurs, I say this even to top executives of companies, they spend just too little time with their families because work pressure and also with this globalization, your boss is sitting somewhere in London or somewhere in time zones and everything, Zoom calls at 10 p.m. and things like that. So there's so much of pressure, especially on startups, I feel. And the younger people, most startups are in the age group of 30 to 40. And they're married also. So I think the Bhagavad Gita, while it's useful for everybody, will be, I think, particularly useful to improve the effectiveness of our entrepreneurs.
What parting message, one piece of advice you would like to give the entrepreneurs? Something we've talked a lot about that. We have given some very good advices. But if just one message you would like to give to the entrepreneurs, this should help.
Be positive, Be positive. I found that if you're think through what you're going to do well. Do your homework well. Whether it's marketing, cash flow, or do your homework well. Once you've done that, have self-confidence and be positive. The beauty about this world is nothing is the same. If you feel that, there have been 2 quarters when business has been bad, don't worry. The 3rd quarter will be good as long as you do it right. So don't give up hope. Be positive. Being positive and being aspirational made you an entrepreneur. Didn't you check up that cushy job for some particular reason. You did that because you were positive. Never give up that being positive. And that some chemicals start flowing out of you. I'm telling you, it's very easy to differentiate between a man of confidence and a man who doesn't have confidence. Be self-confident. Then you will surely win. Surely win. 100%.
It was really nice having your suggestions. I'm sure the audience would have learned a lot from this podcast.
I'm delighted to be here and giving whatever experience sharing with our startups. We are all proud of you. I think you took the jump. I can tell you for every person who took the jump, there are at least 100 who felt, oh, I wish I could do it, but I don't have the guts. So wish you well.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd all need this motivation from you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Nice talking to you.
So if you're an aspiring founder / entrepreneur, an established businessman, or somewhere in between in your business journey, I'm sure the advices, the suggestions, the insights, the experience shared by Mr. Vijay will help you in your business. If you like the channel, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review on our channel. Thank you very much.